Hey there, welcome back. So today I'm going to go over the most popular Stephen King books. Full disclosure, I'm not actually a very big Stephen King fan. The books that I've read by him, I've either given 5 stars, all-time favorites, I recommend them to friends and family all the time, or 1 to 2 star, I hated this book, I don't understand the hype. So for my own personal knowledge of where I should go from here on in terms of what books to read by Stephen King, I turned to the internet and I found a bunch of blogs which ranked and listed the best Stephen King books, took the top 10 from numerous websites, and just to tally them up to see what the internet recommends on the best Stephen King books. I then went to YouTube and typed in personal top 10 favorite Stephen King books, 10 best Stephen King books, 10 underrated classics, or I didn't actually put in 10, I just took the list and then whatever the creator had listed as in the top 10 place or the top 5 place, took them and added them to my list. So without further ado, I'm going to get into what the internet tells me the best of the Stephen King books are to see where I should go next, and hopefully it'll help you. What I'm most interested in, though, is the books lower in the list, because we all know the most popular Stephen King books. We know The Shining, we know It, we know Pet Sematary. I can list off like The Dark Tower and Misery, those kind of books that have movie adaptations, that's in pop culture. Everyone knows about these. I want to know about the books that people talk about along with these books. The ones that are, I guess, underrated or not as well known. Those are the ones I want to read. There are going to be more than 10 on this list, so we're just going to get started. Number 1, to no one's surprise ever, the most popular recommended book is It, with the movie adaptation that came out around the, well, not, it's been a couple years now, but it came out, so it was top on a lot of lists. A lot of people picked up the book. This wasn't surprising. It is a great story. You have small town vibes, and you have a killer. I want to call him a killer clown because that's how he's represented in the movie, but coming after these kids, everyone knows the story. I'm not going to go into too much detail. This is one I have personally read and enjoyed, but needs to reread to see if it's really worth it. It is over 1,000 pages, and yes, I will be mentioning a generalish of the page count just because it's important to me when I know what Stephen King book I'm looking up next. The next most highly recommended book was another one that I have read, Pet Sematary. Again, you got some good small town vibes. A doctor takes up a new job where there is a pet cemetery that if you bury your pets in, they will come back to life. But remember, sometimes dead is better. This is just an exploration on grief with great character work. I can completely understand why it was recommended so highly by fans. Page count is in the 580 range, depending on the edition, and it just flies by when you're reading this book. Up next, if anything, surprised that it isn't higher, number 1 on the list, you have The Shining. Another book that I have read and did not enjoy, so maybe I need to reread it. I read it in high school. So The Shining, you have isolation, wintry vibes. The caretaker of a hotel is there with his family. They basically just have to keep the place running while in the off season when no one's staying there. You have supernatural elements. Everyone knows the deal with The Shining, I think. It is in the range of 660 pages. Was not for me, but like I said, to each their own. Next is my personal all-time favorite Stephen King book that I've ever read, would be Misery. You have an author who's been kidnapped, being held hostage by his number 1 fan, just an intense read, mostly taking place in this one room and this one house on this isolated farm area. It is so good. Range of 380-ish pages, and I can't say enough good things about this book, just I don't want to spoil anything by talking about it. I understand so much why this is so highly recommended by fans. It seems accessible by lots of people, very easy to read, highly recommend. The next on this list is Salem's Lot. This is my most anticipated Stephen King book that I want to read. From what I understand, some people return to a town called Salem's Lot to face an evil. I imagine there'll be some small town vibes, supernatural goings on. I'm really looking forward to reading this. There are about 480 pages, and people I know and trust with their opinion have told me it's a great book that I will enjoy. All right, next on this list, a book that I will read eventually, but no time soon, The Stand. It is over 1,000 pages. I think it's post-apocalyptic. Some kind of flu wipes out like 99% of the population in like a week, and you're just surviving in this. I don't want to know spoilers. I know a lot of people love this, and it's like classic Stephen King. I'll get to it eventually. The next book is... really, it was recommended a lot of times. Up there with, like, The Shining and all them other ones that I'm surprised I have never heard of this book before. The Dead Zone. I'm just going to read the Wikipedia summary for this one, because I don't know what's a spoiler and I've heard nothing about it online, really. Johnny, the small boy who skates at a breakneck speed into the accident that for one horrifying moment plunges him into the dead zone. Johnny Smith, the small-town schoolteacher who spun the wheel of fortune and won 4.5-year trips into the dead zone. Johnny Smith, who awakens from a coma with an accursed power, the power to see the future and the terrible fate that awaits mankind in the dead zone. It is 400 pages and really, really, really loved online, so I guess I'll read this eventually. Another book that I have read and did not enjoy, but apparently got a lot of love online, is 11/22/63. In this book, the main character goes back in time to stop the assassination of JFK. Honestly, it's a lot of domestic, everyday slice of life, self-inserted historical romance with a little bit of assassination foiling plot and a decent amount of time travel, actually. I enjoyed the time travel a lot in this book. It's probably actually my favorite example of time travel in fiction. I just wasn't a fan of the historical romance that took up the majority of this book. But very much loved online. People I watch reviews of list this in their favorite books of all time, so it might be for someone else. Next on this list, we have just a series. Like, people online, the Dark Tower series is beloved as one of the most amazing high fantasy collections online, and while that genre is not really for me, I'm sure it's a very good recommendation for other people. Next on this list is a book that I didn't even know was written by Stephen King until I started doing this. The Green Mile. Takes place in a prison, has a fantastic movie adaptation, and comes in at how many pages? Nearly 600 pages. I'm adding this to the list of my TBR because really enjoyed the movie adaptation. I had no idea it was even based on a book. The next book is Stephen King's first novel, Carrie. Coming in at just 250 pages, or just over 250 pages. You have a teenage girl in high school. You all know the classic dance and murder sprees that happen. Not really sure if this is a book I'm ever going to check out, but it did seem to get a decent amount of love online, and I just really wanted to include one of Stephen King's earliest works in this list. Alright, the next book that was recommended is, honestly, probably second on the list of Stephen King books I really want to read is Needful Things. With nearly 800 pages, you have what I'm assuming is small town vibes, because that seems to be Stephen King's thing. A store opens up, and it has something that everyone wants, and they make like more or less a token payment, and then the promise to owe the store owner a favor. I'm told bad things happen from there. I'm really looking forward to reading this book. Another book that's getting a lot of love online was Under the Dome. Over 1,000 pages, a town gets trapped with a dome. A dome just appears over a town, and they're stuck in there, and that's pretty much all I know about this book, but again, people seem to enjoy it. I don't think this is a book I'm really going to read too much into. What I do know about it, which falls in the range of spoilers, it's not really something I'll enjoy. Another book that people seem to be really passionate about, that I have never heard of before, is Duma Key. Again, I don't know too much about this one, and I try to avoid spoilers where I can, but from what I understand, a guy gets into a serious accident, his life falls apart, he gains supernatural powers, and then something about painting. And I think maybe a vacation getaway, something. But the people who've read this book seem very passionate about how well written it is. I'm probably going to have to add this to my list of Stephen King books to read. And at just over 600 pages, not the biggest commitment in the world. All right, another book that, again, I've never heard of before, but people online who've read this book very passionate about. Desperation. I'm just reading the Goodreads summary for this one because it's short and really drew me in. There's a place along Interstate 50 that some call the loneliest place on earth. It's known as Desperation, Nevada. It's not a very nice place to live. It's an even worse place to die. Let the battle against evil begin. Welcome to Desperation. Just over 550 pages. I'm probably going to check this one out. All right, another book that I've really heard nothing about, Revival. Not quite as highly recommended or spoken about as often as some of the other books on this list, but the people recommending it, again, really seem to enjoy it. I don't know much about it, but small town vibes in the 60s, something about a priest and another character in a rock and roll band dealing with addiction, and then of course there's a little kid. There's a little kid in a Stephen King book. I'm just assuming psychic powers at this point. Just how many pages is this one? Just over 400 pages. So might be a good spot for someone looking for a different Stephen King book. The next book that I've heard nothing about, but I'm at the risk of sounding like a broken record at this point, people seem to really enjoy online, The Dark Half. From what I understand, an alcoholic author isn't doing so great, but under a pen name, he writes an international bestseller. I really don't know much more than that, but it's just over, I think, 460 pages. I know nothing about this book, but who knows? It might be good. Okay, the next book I've at least heard of talked about before, Firestarters, and once again I'm going over to Goodreads summary. The Department of Scientific Intelligence, aka the SHOP, never anticipated that two participants in their research program would marry and have a child. Charlie inherited pyrokinetic powers from her parents, who had been given a low-grade hallucinogenic called Lot 6 while at college. Now the government is trying to capture young Charlie and harness her powerful fire-starting skills as a weapon. I want to know where Stephen King even gets the ideas for these plots, because a lot of the times it just sounds awesome. The next book is Different Seasons. Seems to be getting a lot of love online, or especially for a short story collection. I don't know too much about it other than it's a short story collection. Another book that I've never heard of, but people talk passionately about, is Lisey's Story. From what I understand, her author husband passed away. She's going through his papers and works, and there is somewhere he used to go in his life that he got creative ideas from, but it was apparently very dangerous. I don't know much about this, but apparently it's a widow's journey and grief turns into a deadly journey, life-threatening. I don't know much, but it kind of sounds cool. All right, not gonna lie, I added this one because the summary sounds like it would fit in so well with the Stephen King drinking game. It's called Bag of Bones. Here's what Goodreads says about it. 4 years after the sudden death of his wife, 40-year-old best-selling novelist, take a shot, Mike is still grieving. Unable to write and plagued by vivid nightmares set in the western Maine summer house, take a shot, he calls Sarah. Mike reluctantly returns to the lakeside getaway. There he finds his beloved Yankee town held in the grip of a powerful millionaire, Max, I don't say last names, whose vindictive purpose is to take his 3-year-old granddaughter away from her widowed young mother, Maddie. Not gonna lie, I kind of just want to play the Stephen King drinking game, and that seems like a good book to do it in, but people seem to like this book online, or at least, while it wasn't as highly recommended at this point, the people who did recommend it really enjoyed it. Finally, another book that I've actually read. This was a book that was recommended to me by a coworker. It's her all-time favorite Stephen King book. She has a quote of it tattooed on her body, Dolores Claiborne. It tells the story of a housekeeper kind of person who is accused of murder, and her defense is more or less, I didn't really kill this person because here's how I've killed someone in the past. And it is just a very personal story, and I really, really loved this book. Highly recommend. I also realized I stopped saying page number, so this was 380 pages. The next book kind of really only made this list because a couple people were ranking like 50 Stephen King books, and this book either made it near the top of the list or in one case the #1 spot, so they clearly enjoyed it. Heart of Atlantis. It's a short story collection. I don't know much about it, but I'm not for short stories, but maybe someone else is. All right, the last book that I'm going to talk about is The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. This book has actually been on my TBR for a while now, so I'm kind of excited to eventually get to it. A little girl is lost in the woods, and her favorite, I think, baseball player is Tom Gordon, so she only has this portable radio for comfort as she tries to survive in the wilderness. She might be hallucinating. There might actually be a monster after her. How old is she? She's 9. She's 9 years old, surviving in this woods, and I've heard theories that maybe it's a Wendigo from like the same one from Pet Sematary, but I think that's just them, like the Stephen King multi-universe trying to connect them. So that might be the main reason I want to read it. But I've heard very good things online from the people who have read it, have enjoyed it. It has just over 260 pages, so should theoretically be a quick read. I look forward to getting to it. And this concludes my dive into the internet's most popular recommended Stephen King books. I hope you've at least seen or heard one or two that you haven't heard of before. Maybe you can check them out. I'm going to see what ones of this list I'm going to continue on reading, and let me know what your favorite Stephen King books are, because I have no idea really where to go, and this is my best attempt at navigating Stephen King books that I'll likely like. All right, see ya. Bye.